Yellow, yellow, folks. Once again, this is Eurox right here on the date. The date being now it is 3:33 p.m. Today is the 4th of March, 2022. This is a second test per se, even for sound. I heard the other one, or the first one I did yesterday, and yeah, it did sound a lot better. But I am doing this live from my laptop for now and get into this groove. So, yeah, and I forgot to say yesterday, which I should say, please, by all means, don't forget to subscribe and give a thumbs up and or thumbs down because, we're being raw here and unadulterated. And today's topic will be the day after. You know, we've been talking so much about the possibility of nuclear war and and even talking about rumors of war when the reality is we're living war every day, right? The fact that we have these conglomerate bigger than even oligarchs, the folks that make the weapons and the firepower, who develop the so-called nuclear fission to boil up and blow the life out of everything and vaporize everything. This is what that great Satan is, right? You know where I'm coming from? I'm sure you guys know that. I mean, imagine if there was no gun and no type of weapon, right? But it's not reality because this stuff exists and it keeps being made, it keeps getting made, right? So, how strong is a firearm against a nuclear missile? I mean, not very strong, right? It's futile. So, when we talk about nuclear power and nuclear arms, what we do know, at least from what we've seen in recent history, I was what? I'd say 11, 12 when the situation in Chernobyl happened, if I'm correct. And those years in the 80s, the early 80s, especially when Reagan came in, when he got voted in, we still had Trudeau in those years up until 1980. But by 19, it was after John Turner, when Trudeau retired, he kind of dropped the ball and he was out. That was it for the Liberal Party. And then we had those conservative years with Brian Mulroney, Prime Minister Brian Mulroney at the time, right? So there was a big paranoia about, of course, the Cold War was still happening since the 50s, right? This is already 30 years going strong, but it was, no one was really trusting Russia. And we used to see a lot of the shows in the media with Russia being a spy and, all this weird stuff, right? Once again, propaganda. Of course, myself and my peers, we were all paranoid about this bomb going off, right? And because we knew even prior to Chernobyl happening, the only example we had of that was, of course, what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and all these places, right? Because it was, they tell you, oh, it was Fat Boy and what is it? One was called Fat Boy and the other one was Enola Gay. I mean, imagine that, naming a bomb after your mom, right? So, yeah, when those things dropped, cameras caught it as usual. Don't ask me how, but yeah, I guess they were very nefarious, and you'd see the camera in the plane and the bombs being dropped, right? The bottom, whatever of the plane opens up, and next thing you know, you actually see this stuff going down, right? And you see the Manhattan Project. When that came out, and those documentaries used to be shown Sometimes you catch it in one of those public broadcasting stations, namely PBS. They used to have some good gems. That was the example of what nuclear bombs did, right? Especially when we saw, like, I was just a nerd like that. I used to watch out for those type of documentaries, and you'd see that thing blow up, and you'd be like looking at it like, wow. And then you'd see the next shot of all shots. Oh, the backdraft of the blast on the poor soldiers filming the stuff, right? Or they always had these soldiers like nearby. I don't know, just to see how they'd react if that stuff blew up in their face. And next thing you know, that big flash of light and everything, right? So that's the example we get of that. And then, of course, once again, like what happened in Asia when America dropped the bomb, right? Bombs, right? We don't know how many more they might have dropped altogether, because even after that, we know now that there was testing, nuclear testing of bombs straight through the 50s up until the 90s, actually. This stuff was going on until we made some truce for peace. And don't ask why the environment is messed up, right? But don't forget, this is generational. If folks weren't born to know, let's say within the last 30 years, to know that reality, and see on the news every night the reality of what war was going on and what they were using, right? We used to see, and what nuclear, like actual big bombs, that's not something we saw every day except for those documentaries. And when this movie came out the day after, well, that freaked everyone. I remember, at least my peer and myself, we couldn't sleep. And, we had Carrie, we had The Exorcist, we had all this crazy, crazy, shining horror films. But when that came out, and that was a TV film, right? This was an ABC TV film, and I will tell you, this was what, in the early '80s. Okay, so it was sort of a prediction, right? It was trying to be like a sort of a heads up as to what was going to happen in the future, right? And this was, as far as I recall, this was supposed to be in the year what, 2000, if I'm correct. The setting of the documentary in the future, it was, that type of Terminator One type of energy, right? They had um, that type of setting where you'd see the sunset. But when this thing came out, this thing was built up as like a documentary, right? And I remember when it got to the part where the nuclear war was going to happen, and of course, behold, this is like 1980 some. The person who's the aggressor, we saw the character. The guy was wearing a turban, right? As to assume that, oh, well, this is coming from the Middle East, and yeah, they launch, what was it? Ping ponging, like, you know, s- uh, four missiles, and you see on the TV, the guy's looking on the radar, and there's four going towards the states, and oh well, the states, they're gonna have to shoot another four, three or something, and the four nuclear missiles knock out the American three, leaving one, going straight to this. And anyways, you know the rest of the scene as it went, right? If you've never seen it, I recommend you look it up. It's probably for free on YouTube or some, but I know it comes up. So when we saw that, and of course now this thing blew up, right? And you see the shots with it blows up the light, the X-ray, everybody's being X-rayed, the dog, the cat, the car, all this weirdness, right, going on. And I remember when I saw that, I was like, no way. And everyone for a minute. I think this is just, when I'd say the tip of the iceberg of where or how far the media and the press pushed this cold propaganda war on our psyche, right? Because
everyone was like, we had, what you call protests, and yeah, you even had those hippies who became yippies before they got really rich and bought out in the rest of the 80s. They were like, no, like chill out on the nuclear power, no, no nukes, and they had that going on. That was probably even one of the last, like I would say, world protest before talking about the environment. Because not too long in that period, we had an ozone layer problem, right? They were saying there was a hole in the sky, and right, so I don't know. Maybe it was because of all those testings that was going on. But when we saw the day after and the prediction, right? So check this out. So this propaganda happened. This is the 80s, right? So fast forward the year 1991, like something like 10 years after, right? After this thing is released. And lo and behold, well, now we know, all right? Now we know. I'll cut to the chase. It's said that the person who would be Osama bin Laden got trained, right? With the services, the FBI or whatnot, right? Or is it the CIA? For me, it's all the same. Anyway, right? So he was trained up there, and yeah, something didn't jive, and I don't know, they screwed him over because that's just what they do, right? And so he became that guy, right? To kick off the whole thing with the war, right? In the Middle East, and that whole thing went down, right? So anyone who'd seen the day after, I don't know, myself being very analytical, I was like, isn't that weird? Because they were pushing, and it's almost unconsciously, we were like, that shit's gonna probably happen someday, right? One day, you're probably gonna see this guy, and lo and behold, that was Osama bin Laden. That was that guy in the, if you look at it now, right? But I mean, he didn't look like, but the image was there, right? And that, so here we are today now, and we've had so many movies and so many, Simpson episodes that's been going nearly 40 years now. Can you imagine what that, I mean, as great as and brilliant as it, I guess it could be known as for a cartoon, an animated television series in that world, right? It's not the Flintstones, that's for sure. Um, we've been saying like, oh, how they've been so close to predicting all this stuff, right? And of course, this is, the irony about The Simpsons, though. Homer works in a nuclear factory, right? I remember when I first saw The Simpsons, I was like, he works in a nuclear. Yeah, okay, I get it, the nuclear family, duh, right? But since then, that's gone on to like it's almost like a day after, but animated. I would almost think so. But that's me thinking really far out here. Like once again, you had to. I'm trying to explain this whole context about the fear mongering, the exploitation of death culture, and also that I've been using the word like that great Satan, right? How low can you go? How much can you not only psych out people mentally, but also psych them out physically? And we're probably going to see signs of that too, because if people are not holding it together mentally by what they're seeing every day being fed, and it's not just television, it's going through social media, right? But even those things, at least I've come to realize in these days, we have to really be mindful about what we absorb and what we actually take in for truth. Because when the day after came out, yeah, people were, tripping for a minute. They used to even, it was like the Cold War was at its peak. Because the 50s, that was one thing, right? The 50s, the 60s, those James Bondy type of espionage. Yeah, nothing came of that. And this is the big takeaway from what I'm saying here today. Everything is not what it seems, right? So yeah, we had the 80s pass through the James Bond vibes and all that. So now the 90s, by the time the 90s came kicked around, even before that, right? Uh When the wall came down and Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, take down that wall, right? And that happened. 19, what was it, 1988, 89? Anyway, when that happened, it was like, okay, for a minute, everybody thought, okay, we're going to live in peace and everything that the Cold War was over, right? I mean, there was even music videos with Reagan and was it Reagan and was it Yeltsin? Boris Yeltsin, who was in the music video. Frankie Goes to Hollywood, if I'm correct. Yeah, and they were beating each other. Anyway, all of that, I digress to say that by the time we saw the 90s come around and some of these things were playing out in front of us, and here we are today, still, and that elephant in the planet room, the bomb. Before they used to call it the bomb. Now it's the bombs, right? One is called, I hear, Satan too. That's our bro back in Russia, and the bros, the Nazi bros over in Ukraine. Apparently, everybody's just going up in these places like, hey, today we're at this nuclear facility. Next thing you know, Russia be like tomorrow, yo, no, we got this one, we caught this. I mean, okay. So everybody's panicking and saying they're pushing for that crazy bomb shit again. They want to do, and of course, the first thing everyone thinks about, once again, if you hadn't seen, the day after documentary slash movie, TV movie, uh, you see on the internet and you've seen other films about what the possibility and the looks of a nuclear bomb going off, right? An explosion. It'd be like boom, and like loud and burn you up and everything, right? Now, my thing is, after World War II, even though that they've been bombing stuff and testing stuff throughout the end of the 20th century, they're probably still doing it today. I started to think and say, you know, even though they're making this stuff and they're doing it, how is it like we're not aware or even trying to do as a world something to say, hey, collectively, we know we got to protect each other, but really, is that really, really, really the only last freaking resource we have? After using regular arms, like nobody, we haven't gotten into like physical war battle. Like you see them, it goes on, but the technology's been so much better now that, and the generation's so like different and soft anyways now, they wouldn't survive the type of battle that our ancestors went through, even as far as like these recent wars, right? I mean, a lot of these folks are coming back more shook. We used to call it shell shock, right? And once again, that's probably a reason why we got all screwed up generationally, right? Because guys who came back, the soldiers who came back from War One, World War Two, right? They call it shell shock. Now we know it's post trauma stress disorder. Of course, you're shooting people over the place, you're seeing guts. It's more real life than what we saw on television. Television, as people call it sometimes. Back like we saw those films in the 30s and all that, World War films. Yeah, everybody, and then until you saw Vietnam and you're like, ooh, it's a little bit now real, right? And then you hear like the real people who went and it started to come out like, yeah, no, that was like we're not trying to be manly here, man. We couldn't go to the bathroom. You're gonna be doing, your stuff on yourself in the trenches. Think about that. We never talk about that, right? They glamorized it. These guys can walk around like what? You guys wearing diapers through the whole thing? No, there's no like. It's real, real what it is. It's real ghetto. You talking ghetto? You got your same socks you're wearing. You lucky if you're that. God forbid if it's freezing cold or something like that. And now like, where you gonna change your underwear? Where you gonna get the time to even think? Like if you get once you get the shower thing going on, right? Yeah, it's pretty rough. So when you think of that reality and you say, how long can that all of that go on? And if that type of warfare, which we're seeing happening right now in with Ukraine, because these guys are getting on, like they say, boots on the ground, and they looks like they're using all these, what do they call them, types of weapons and tomahawks and all whatever whatnot, and they got jets too, right? Apparently they're flying up in the sky. Like, I don't know how many planes they got, but like, you know, and all it takes is, hey, somebody to do a sanction or something, and they can't get no more oil to fly the plane, right? Or but at the end of all of that, if that we're being led to understand that if that doesn't cut it, then by all means necessary, just use a big ass old freaking bomb and blow the fuck out. like I don't know, really. And even then, think, like, oh, they say, some of these folks, these leaders have the, what do you call them? They have the briefcase and the codes and all that. It's like, how do these freaking people sleep at night? And even, like, even if they change the code, like, how do you go, like, do 4 or 5 years ruling the world and saying, if I'm in a bad mood today and these guys really mess me up, yeah, we're gonna have to talk about it, but I'm ready to push the or turn the key or push the buttons or whatever. And just see that stuff go and like know that I'm gonna be the reason that we're gonna say it's the end of the world at this time today, PM. It's because of me. And after that shit's done, I guess I can go have a shakes and some fries after that. And oh, I'm gonna get ready to think. Oh yeah, I can create the world and make the world now the way I want to make it, right? And be off, and and of course these folks are gonna think, yeah, they'll never die. They're gonna leave something for the legacy, right? But their souls, we don't know where that's gonna go. Was it worth it? I don't know. If you're in the pits of hell burning up eternally and you start flashing, seeing everyone's life that you've taken away in the big blow up of nuclear fission going off everywhere in the atomic energy, right? And you see, you just live in this, you're being in hell and you're seeing all this go on, every day. Was it worth it? I don't know. That's going deep, but that, they tell you life flashes, and indirectly, even people that you indirectly connect with, they end up in your whole life flashing. So that's some heavy, deep stuff there, But I guess I'll take on the soul, the meaning of the soul, and that whole deep post life topic another day, because I look into that too, right? It's all in all. Like, especially these soldiers, hey, is it possible a lot of them are old souls that come back? I've heard weird, weird stuff like that. There was one kid actually in the States, he claimed he came back as a civil war soldier. He was drawing pictures. No, actually, well, I've heard there was a kid who thought he came or felt connected to someone, some spirit that was in the Civil War. And then there was another kid, right? Both boys who claimed that, oh, this other kid was in the Second World War. That's it. And his plane crashed. And to the point where he was like, oh, the darn Japanese, the darn Japs. And the mother was freaking out, like, how do you even know how to talk like that? Right. Anyways, just so, hey, maybe that's what's going on. Once again, we have a bunch of youngish, 20 some, 30 some, which is, man, that 2000 went by fast. It's 2022, right? New Year's officially, with the spring coming out every day tomorrow. Please God, right? But imagine, it's still spring with a lot of young bloods out there, and they going out just like how it happened 100 years ago. Isn't that weird? No, it's not. It's, you see the pattern, just like the First World Wars, right? Young, 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 from the mouths of babes, go out there, do it for the future. So, hey, if you get resurrected back, you can come and do this bullshit all over again until you get it right. I don't know. But yeah, the day after was something else, and here we are today, nearly what, 40 years or so later, And we're talking about the bomb again, or bombs. And everybody, another thing, you know how many of those bombs are everywhere? Heck, even in The Simpsons, there's an episode. I don't know. I know some people will know this reference. There's this episode where in the '90s, I even saw, I believe, right, and Clinton is still president, and they're having a meeting, and some joke about cankles, and Clinton goes, "Oh, I gotta go. Quebec's got the bomb." Right? I think some people caught that. I caught that. I was like, "What?" And I thought about that. Quebec is they got like what they call Hydro Quebec and Power Dam and James Bay. Hey, don't mess with Quebec, right? But that could tell you that it's hey, these guys who make this stuff, right? You have to ask yourself, and if they're still doing it, like, okay, how many nuclear ready to go heavy tank, in the ground, like, wow, it's pretty wild. But is it ever going to get to that? That is, I guess, what the big question is. I've heard folks say, nah, it's not going to. There are some folks who are really saying, oh, it's almost any minute. The leaders are saying they don't want to do it, but they're hijacking or whatever, sieging these places, right? These nuclear power plants, right? So they're saying no, nobody really wants it, but we're gonna chill here for a minute, right? So I don't know. They say nuclear power is good. Like we have microwave ovens, right? So there's some good to everything. It's in whose hands. And then again, yes, here we are. We're just wondering and talking, and when you watch the news or whatnot, it's like any day now. There's some people going on with that. But my feeling is, based on the history that we've seen, I feel that once we knew what happened back in World War II, the people at least who were around then, who knew the real down low about how, because this was big. Now we had bigger bombs, of course, but for that time they knew that, hey, this is something that should not repeat itself, right? Because those folks, especially like Admiral Byrd, and those folks who went out there, they all came back shook. A lot of people were just crazy. Like, yeah, well, crazy. I mean, they got the back then. Today's diagnosis would be, narcissist or psychopathic, right? Giving high fives and stuff. Hey, we blew up half the planet. But there were some people who left shook, and I'm sure after that they made sure that, and even with all the powers that be, even with Russia getting the formula to make the bombs and everybody else getting it, I'm sure, you know you'd have to be very, very, very nihilistic and very, like, deeply, soully troubled, especially when it comes, because this decision of launching bombs, it doesn't just really come from one person like we're always thought to believe, right? This stuff comes, like, it's a bunch of people, like, let's say, like NATO or the UN, right? It's like, you got to have at least a magic number, probably 13, because they always like to do their things in, or 12, right? Or 7 or 3, right? And they have to sit down and do their shango, do their hocus pocus, and talk to the mirrors and all that stuff and their crystal balls. But I don't feel it's gonna really go down. The planet's very big. At least I could say God has blessed us with. When you take a plane, I've taken the plane out to Ukraine and Kiev, and that's some big land. And you look up in the sky and you think, if something like that was, you look how tiny the world is. So you look at it and you think, there's probably some, bad things going on, people getting, like, plugged and stuff like that, right? And It's so minuscule to when you're up in the air and you see and you think, wow, a missile and a bomb can blow. And it's not like what you see on the news. The visuals that you see on TV and everything you hear about that stuff. Don't forget a lot of this stuff. Hey, there are we used to call them camera tricks, right? The bigger the hey, you can be. They say the camera adds 10 pounds to you physically. Well, imagine if you got stuff blown up, right? It that's the craft of it. Now, if you could see and try and imagine in real life, even though, like, yes, this stuff happens in, real life, but just imagine, as they say, like now Europe, they're freaking out. It's civilized. We never seen anything like this, So it doesn't happen in white countries, right? In third world, yeah, but in white country, we never seen a Tommy Hawk go right through somebody's apartment complex, right? So yeah, it's different. Now, how much of that reality can come to pass, I would be more concerned about. Because it seems that the lines of that and the fact that they've got, once again, the Nazis are back. I don't understand why people are not like putting a hot alarm. Maybe because, hey, they're everywhere and hey, that's just what it is. But at the same time, I don't necessarily believe that everybody's down with that. So that's food for thought, right? I mean, heck, this guy, the Russia has the bomb. Now, who says that maybe they're not Nazis also, right? I mean, since it's so, infiltrated, what does that say? I mean, wouldn't the scariest thing be a Nazi with a nuclear bomb? I don't know. Something to think about, though. Yeah, so the day after. And if this shit went down, like, what would be a day after if you got through that? Once again, not like what we've seen in the movies, like we've seen in the documentaries. Apparently, on time, on the dime, cameras in the aftermath of war torn, war savage land, right? Like some people say it's genius. Meh. Maybe maybe history will be the one to judge because we have pictures of ha- you know at least since way back, even in like in the 60s, naked children running, right? Chick chick, put it on, get an award for that, right? Kids almost, burnt half to death and all this stuff. And in the Second World War, that there was a lot of that, How isn't man have a lot of gall? We have so much gall. Go down there, let's bring, 1940s camera, load up the camera and let's shoot this stuff. Let's shoot all those people like who are getting like, oh, especially um, the German Nazi films. Now that, nah, gee, come on now. They had that director. She passed away. That woman there. Doing track shot of Hitler and what you call crane shot and all of them. And I used to, and when you look at that, it makes you wonder. There was a lot of people in that crowd, all dressed the same. Was it special effects? Since we're trying to say that the Nazis don't exist anymore, was that big stadium of all those guys standing up doing goose step? What did they do? A copy paste image back then? Looked pretty real to me. I don't know. So that's why we have to be very, especially in this woke. Everybody like to say, I like to put my what you call hashtags, right? The hashtags are there because my thing about the hashtags, it's like history, like everything in the internet and the algorithms. Whatever you put out there, it sticks. So yeah, but nowadays, we have the resources to learn how to make things better in this world. We are disconnected at the same time, spiritually also heavily disconnected. Like, who wants to believe in a god, right? That's why we see, and I am happy to also endorse all the great, powerful Israelite channels that I do see on YouTube, because if anything, that gave me a lot more hope than, that there is a chance, right? Seeing that, our bros and our sisters get back together and try to, own it. A lot of people will say, yeah, we're not doing anything and we haven't advanced. No, this is really good. I mean, yeah, we have a few that are maybe a little bit more extreme than others, but so did the Catholic Church and everything. And look what they ended up doing, right? So, yeah, big up to um, IUIC and and all the other great, uh, we guess we call them ministries, right? Uh, Putting out the real word to our Israelites out there. So yeah, I guess I was kind of going off there. I don't even know if I'm making sense today. It's Friday, so now it's 4:08 p.m. and the date is the 4th of March 2022. Springtime coming around the corner. And yeah, once again, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and or subscribe. We're going to get this. We're going to get it better. I'm just like really trying to figure out the formula of what it is I want to do. And I'm also playing around at the same time. So pardon me. And pardon me, folks, if once again I'm trying out a mic here. I'm hoping the mic is working. But that's the interesting thing. One of the reasons why, I never wanted to get onto the all right, 20 some in the beginning when this was coming out. I put out a couple of blogs and then I don't know, it was something I got kind of weirded out. I don't know why, but I started to think if Facebook was, that almost near intimate. Imagine you're videoing yourself and you're putting out opinions and ideas. And I see a lot of the great blogs. There's so many great like, YouTube channels out there. It's grown. And at the same time, you get those, you get what you call your trolls, and it could be very divisive. And I see a lot of the channels, sometimes they're fighting between each other, even though they're all under the same umbrella. Hello? You can't fool me with that. But even then, like I said, you gotta ask questions, you gotta be skeptical about everything you watch, even what you read, right? Because now, like, even one of the things I learned with the Israelites is that, you know, even books that we have today aren't up to par to the books that were existing even a century ago. So you're better off almost reading the century old books compared to the newer versions, because so much has been dumbed down and trimmed down. You won't even find any truth anymore, right? So there are good things happening. There are possibilities, right? But a day after, when we think or believe or seen folks walking in the street after, like, the whole piece of land was just lifted off the earth, the ground, who survives that, and even if you did survive that, how do you even want to survive living after, like, yeah, like in the movies, when they always like, oh, okay, let's you got the one kid and the girlfriend, and let's bring them together and start like a new Genesis, right? Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. Especially this snowflake generation. This is the thing. They're young out there, and I'm not trying to, bring them down. If anything, I would say millennials, you got to get ready to fight, because we almost too old for that. We can get your back. Our, Gen Xers, some of us are still there, but we got so accustomed. And I think this awakening, the wokeness is coming, that we can once again, at least in my case, I can take a perspective looking at 200 years of history and be able to say, okay, there's a pattern here. Now I could, right? This is not like something that was always the case. So if you are, I would say, even if you are, there are brilliant young people out there who could absorb history, but even to take the context of why, right? Like you could learn, oh, the World War I, World War II, civil rights, but eh, even to grow into that and understand once again, the timeline and and how that works. And hey, once again, you've got some old folk, nearly 100 and even 70s now, who are they were plotting stuff when they were like 10. They wanted to be that, and they got that by any means necessary, right? Yeah. So, but even those folks that I'm talking about, they always seem to be a camera. They got a baby picture of them. They got them in like some like vaudeville thing. I don't know, man. That camera's everywhere. That camera telling us everything. That camera being the all-seeing eye and eye. Right. Okay. I think we got that one. Yeah, I kind of like that one. 40 minutes and 20 seconds going on. It's now 4:13 in 2022, March 4th. Spring is on the way because once again, one thing I've learned is according to the proper calendar, right? The new year and of course Christ's birth is right around the corner in springtime, right? So I'll be looking forward to that. This is the weekend coming up. Everybody bless yourselves, love yourselves, and love your neighbors. Screw the hate. There's no such thing as race. Well, look, even before, like, let's take that for what that is. There's no such thing. I'll accept that if we can all agree that even though we know we hear race is a man made thing, it's true. Look that up. Look up the Balfour Agreement, right? And the history of the world. That's before a lot of the stuff that happened propagated by the people, right? So somehow, sometime, somewhere, maybe that's the big picture of God. Maybe God has to come and really get into the networks and do God's thing, right? Because the history, what we're being told, what we see, what we're being fed, especially in a contemporary world in what we live today. Another brilliant thing that we should know, most folks didn't even know how to read. The education system as we know it today wasn't all, I mean, it was still good. It was actually even better than today. But if we go up maybe even to, I would say, even the 1930s, even after the Second World War, right? It was still not everybody had access to school. I think I would say by my generation in the 80s, that was probably where it got to the, I'd say, the peak, at least for when it came to youth, young people, right? Universities, well, another can of worms there, right? Because that too plays into what is being propagated, right? If you look back in, Darwin's theory, it's in my reality discouraging to probably think that, well, imagine how many Hippocratic oaths and doctors, psychiatrists out there take the oath with the education, the good things taken from, yeah, these folks like the Kinsey and Darwin and these eugenicists. And when you pull back the lens and you say, okay, so your education, formal education comes from this guy who really crafty, put together with other peers this theory that, well, black guys come from apes, right? And they got the skull, and they really went and they got intricate with it. Sorry, intricate, very intricate with it. And here we are today, you know, decades, whatever, century later, and we got folks who are down with that, right? And they are, I'm sure, brilliant people and well educated and doctors and lawyers and all studied up, bachelored and doctored up. But hey, you know, yeah, it's all with the soul, folks. It all boils down to the soul. So yeah, if you really want to say there's no race, well, start acting up on it. Don't be just colorblind, as they love to say. You know, because like obviously what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, they ain't colorblind. They're both literally looking the same. If anything, they're on a different ideology that says, like the Nazi thing. They ain't. I know that for a fact. They ain't down with no. Until that rhetoric comes around, they say, you know what? We just want to be proud white people and love each other, and that's one thing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what black people are trying to get their asses together on, but it hasn't been working for 400 years. Don't ask me why. But when you have to look at it and you look at the reasons why there's conflict and war to begin with, these are the elements we have to also look at. We got to look at the propaganda. You got to look at the media. You got to look at the big wigs out there, the lobbyists. You got to look at all of that, and with prayer, somewhere, somehow, some way, find a way out, and hope that also can reverb itself, vibrate out to everybody else who is like-minded, right? We have a long way to go. These are interesting times. Yes, the world is a stage, right? Actors being president and leaders. This, hey, that's nothing new. That's Ronald Reagan, right? That's Donald Trump, right? And God knows who other, how many other people out there. But they are not you. They are not your soul. They are not your brain, your heart, your lungs, your eyes, your being, right? They help us get around for what we need to live because, well, they have a chokehold on, the powers that produce better living for us. But yeah, these are some takeaways. I've been fasting. I highly recommend it. It's a very good thing to do. Set the perspective. So now at 46:35, going on 47 minutes, I'm going to wrap this up once again. This is just, I guess I'm rambling on a bit, but the topic is once again the day after, what are you going to do on the day after if you make it after the day after? The day, even if there was to be a day after, right? So God bless you all. Shalom. Remember, love your neighbor. Stay in touch with yourself. It's now 4:20. You know what you got to do. Bless up. Peace. This is your rocks.